If you need a good laugh, read the May 24th Calgary Herald op-ed, Oil is an Essential Aspect of Canada's National Identity, History, and Future, by policy analyst William Barclay. The piece is so awful and fawning that it wouldn't merit comment except that Alberta Premier Danielle Smith tweeted it out with this enthusiastic endorsement. This column gets it exactly right. Oil isn't just a product, it's part of who we are as Canadians. Let's stop apologizing for it and start celebrating it. Well, I'm sorry. I celebrate July 1st and Edmonton Oilers victories over the Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup Finals. Those are part of Canadian culture. Alberta is the only place where oil is genuinely part of provincial culture. There's plenty of polling data to back this up. I interviewed pollster Janet Brown of Calgary a few years ago, and she told me that over half of Albertans identify so strongly with oil and gas that they consider an attack on the oil industry to be a personal attack upon themselves. Political scientist Jared Wesley has Albertans draw images that represent their province. Invariably, they draw rig workers and cowboys. Smith shouldn't get away with claiming that oil is a part of Canadian culture. It's a part of Alberta culture. Full stop. We should also push back against the idea that oil is more than a product. No, Premier, it is not. It's a commodity with customers. If those customers switch to a new product because it's more competitive, well, that's the way markets work. In the case of oil, it's had no competition for 125 years. Well, now it does in the form of electricity. Electric vehicles are only just catching on in North America, but in China, they already account for more than half of all new car sales. But it's not just cars. Schools and transit buses, delivery vans, two and three wheelers, which are huge in Asia, are already over 70% electrified. This is key because road transport consumes 45% of global oil production. No wonder the International Energy Agency is calling for peak oil demand by 2030, with decline starting a few years later. Barclay made me laugh with this line from his op-ed. The federal government must embrace the oil industry as an essential aspect of national identity, and is one of Canada's foremost national advantages to have any hope of reestablishing the country on the world stage as a noble alternative to America's so-called exceptionalism. Well, the big Canadian oil companies are mostly owned by foreigners, most of whom are American. And these companies take their cue from Houston, not Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver. Frankly, I can't think of an industry that is less Canadian. Suncor and Cenovus are not the same as Terry Fox or the Tragically Hip or Glenn Gould or the Toronto Blue Jays. CNRL and Imperial Oil are not Medicare or Poutine or Margaret Atwood. Here's another Barclay gem. Alberta is currently flirting with secession largely because the federal government has so emphatically rejected Alberta's oil-based socio-political ecosystem over the last decade. Let me rewrite that for him. Alberta is currently flirting with secession because Premier Smith has unleashed the deplorables of rural Alberta's socio-political ecosystem as she shamelessly champions the oil industry's agenda of more pipelines, local opposition be damned, and as little regulation as possible, the climate and environment be damned. Now that's a much more accurate depiction of what motivates Alberta's separatists. You know what the oil industry is really good at? Creating wealthy Albertans who buy big houses in Mount Royal or Elbow Valley. You know what the oil industry is awful at? Cleaning up its $300 billion of environmental liabilities, like orphan wells, or reducing its greenhouse gas emissions, which now account for 26% of all Canadian emissions, or paying its taxes to rural municipalities, which are owed hundreds of millions of dollars. Sorry, but I refuse to celebrate irresponsible corporate behavior. Know what the oil industry really is? Oil and gas are commodities, and the oil companies are profit-maximizing businesses that have captured Alberta's political culture, including Smith, who was a paid oil lobbyist before she became premier. That's nothing to celebrate, let alone promote as a keystone of your country's heritage and culture. Unless, of course, you happen to be a sycophant named William Barclay or the American-owned Calgary Herald. which really should be ashamed of itself for printing such drivel on its opinion pages. With cheerleaders like that, no wonder Smith and her United Conservatives are becoming more popular in Alberta.